What is up, everybody? Happy Halloween on this Friday, 2 days ahead of what I think is going to be a treat for everybody around the NFL. Bills versus Chiefs going out to the Kansas City beat today with a special episode of Shout. Jesse Newell from The Athletic covers the Kansas City Chiefs, kind enough to give us a couple minutes of his time to get to know this year's version of the Chiefs a little bit better. Jesse, how are you?
Doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful. I feel like it's almost like you don't have to preview this game because everybody kind of knows what's at stake, the players, all of the different angles of this thing. But the one little difference this year is that these are two teams that now all of a sudden have at least one team in their division that's making an early season stand. From your perspective, how have the Chiefs handled that?
Yeah, it's been different. It's the polar opposite of last year, which was, hey, how are the Chiefs doing this? How do they keep blocking field goals on the last play? Are they really the best team in the AFC, but they keep winning? To now, like, oh my gosh, look how superhuman they look. Look how great their offense is. Look how Patrick Mahomes looks like he's in MVP form again. And then you scroll to the standings and go, wait a minute, they're 5-3. They're behind a team in the AFC West. So, it's sort of interesting being around here because, you live through a season where every narrative, every fan take is basically like, well, they keep winning the games. Well, why are you criticizing them? They can't be that bad. And they ended up in the Super Bowl. So it was a good season for the Chiefs, obviously. Now to this year, which is like, oh my gosh, they're this unstoppable force. Forget about the losses. So it has been different. And obviously the Chiefs have a big game coming up against Denver after the bye week in the division. They still have to play Denver twice. So the division is still to be won out there. But yeah, this is a very interesting season to follow the Chiefs. But there's no doubt they're on an upward trend here the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, without a doubt, indeed. I mean, they have looked every bit the part of the superpower they've been over the last couple of years. I mean, offensively, watching them, especially last week, just Patrick Mahomes, the weapons that he has at his disposal, leads the NFL in touchdowns. Should be the leader for MVP. I haven't looked at the odds lately, but what has been different, if anything, about him this year, and how much has Rashee Rice kind of changed the math for this passing game?
Yeah, so let's get to both of those. Number one, for Patrick Mahomes, I think it was an offseason where after the Super Bowl loss, a lot of Chiefs took a long look in the mirror and said, hey, how can I be better? How can I improve things? And what's so interesting about this Chiefs team, you haven't seen as much lately with Rashee Rice coming back because he's such a yak monster. He's such a guy that you get to and get some of those, quote, easy yards. But early in the season when he needed to, that the Chiefs really got aggressive downfield. And if you saw the trend of Patrick Mahomes going through his career, it was average depth of target shrunk every single year. It started out in 2018 where he was throwing the ball down the field, Tyreek Hill, taking all those chances. Tyreek's down there somewhere. But, over the course of time, he'd really become a guy that was really not testing teams downfield. You saw that change this year. I talked to Matt Nagy about this. It started with a group text before OTAs, and they came up with this slogan, AAF, which means aggressive as fire, as Matt Nagy will tell you. Maybe got two of those words right. But they've adopted this mindset. Patrick Mahomes has this AAF shirt in his locker. You've been seeing around offensive players, defensive players. It'll be something that Nagy will say after the play call. He'll say the play call, and then he'll remind Patrick Mahomes in the headset, AAF, AAF. So always thinking aggressively. Even last week, you look, one of Mahomes' interceptions was a back shoulder type throw to Hollywood Brown. He wouldn't have attempted a year ago, but he vowed to himself and vowed to the receivers to give them more chances downfield. And it really has paid off for the Chiefs to have that aggressive mindset. They wanted it a year ago. It didn't really come to fruition, but now with all their pieces back, it's looking really good. And then Rashee Rice, it was hard in training camp. He went through training camp with the Chiefs before his suspension, and him and Mahomes just have this chemistry. It's sort of Travis Kelce-like. It was hard for Mahomes not to throw it to Rashee Rice because he's always open and he always seems to be in the right spot. And Mahomes has talked recently about him reading his body language, which is something that it seems pretty rare in football. He threw him a no-look pass in his first game back, and Rashee said he didn't know it was coming to him, but still was there for it. And so those guys have built up so much. And I know Andy Reid loves that. He feels like it's almost like a running back when Rashee Rice gets the ball in his hands. He just runs downhill. They had him do a running play last week, so maybe look for that in the red zone too. But those two's chemistry means so much. And then now you have those outside threats too. You've got Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. And so the Chiefs now can stretch you this way and they can stretch you this way. And that's made things very difficult and also opened some things up for Travis Kelce over the middle as well.
Yeah, this Bills defense very much in flux with a couple injuries this week, have struggled specifically against the run. I know Isaiah Pacheco is not going to play this week, so that kind of changes things. We could talk about that in a minute, but I want to flip gears real quick because I think it's so interesting how you laid that all out and how things have really come together for that offense. Because the Bills, despite being one of the top offenses in the league, if you look at all the metrics like the DVOA stats, like the rushing stats, efficiency when it comes to, Josh Allen, it just hasn't felt the same as it has in years past. Even last year when they moved on from Stephon Diggs, there just hasn't seemed to have been the same consistency in the passing game. And it's funny hearing you talk about somebody that, he's built a chemistry with, Patrick. I almost feel like that's what's lacking in this Bills passing attack. Something where, building that rapport with Dalton Kincaid, who they drafted in the first round, Keon Coleman, who's all but disappeared since the opener, going for 100 and a touchdown against the Ravens in the first week. And now you have Steve Smith going on a rant, calling him a bust. And that becomes like a storyline this week. But defensively, I think this is such an interesting part of the matchup because the Chiefs defense consistently year after year, they just stay amongst the league's best. And you look this year, especially against the run, they've been really good. So how do you feel like just being in the locker room the first couple of days here, talking to guys about this game, how do you think they match up with this Bills run game? Because that's almost become the identity of their team.
Yeah, and real quick, I do want to mention with Patrick Mahomes, he's talked about this being a build-up to this season. So maybe still hope for, a guy like a Keon Coleman. But if you think back for the Chiefs, so much time the last few years has been trying to build up. Like Rashee Rice goes down, so Xavier Worthy's got to be the number one guy. And so they work him in more than they thought they would. And all of a sudden now Mahomes trusts him. And Rashee Rice, even his rookie year, comes on at the end of the year. They had to use him more than they anticipated. But now all those things come together and Rashee Rice comes back. And all of a sudden you have a team where, okay, he trusts this guy. He trusts this guy. He's been with this guy. He knows where this guy's going to be. So all those things can come together. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time, but really, man, the Chiefs are seeing the fruitions of that now. And their offense does look totally different here in the last 3 weeks. I would say the run game is the key right now. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you probably don't know, but it depends on the numbers you're looking at when it comes to the Chiefs rush defense. They have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in a long time. So like that's a positive thing that you say, okay, they can sort of take that away. But you take that dive deeper, you talk about like DVOA numbers or the EPA numbers, and that tells you that the Chiefs rush defense is not as good as what it appears on the surface. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one is a lot of times the Chiefs get you out of your game script. And so it's hard to run the football a lot when you're down 21-7, like the Commanders were last week, or if you're the Raiders and you immediately get down 14-0. So I think these two sides, if you will, offense, defense, have played complementary football and sort of masked a little bit of this deficiency for the Chiefs, which has been rush defense. And so this is one thing I think the Bills can take advantage of because I don't anticipate them getting blown out. I don't anticipate them becoming one-dimensional, and I just see them committing to the run game. We see all these numbers to talk about how good they are between the tackles and how James Cook might be the best running back of the NFL when it comes to getting additional yardage. And we know the Bills love to go to their 6 offensive lineman sets to kind of go downhill on you. A very interesting stat this week, I heard on a podcast from the PFF podcast, Trevor Sikkema, and those guys do great work, kind of charting these things. But the one thing for the Chiefs is that their rush grade, their run grade when it comes to the back 7 is 7th best in the NFL. Their run grade when it comes to the front 4 is 2nd worst in the NFL. And so they've been struggling to try to find somebody beside Chris Jones who can be more of a run stopper. And they went through options this year and really hasn't worked. They just re-signed Mike Pennell this week. Expect him to play for the Chiefs in his first game back. That sort of speaks to you about how the dire situation the Chiefs have had when it comes to run stopping and having a guy in there who can hold his ground. So I do see this as a big advantage to the Bills. And we know Josh Allen can do the same thing. He can work you with his legs as well when he's scrambling or in the design run game. But this is the thing. This is the can't miss part of this game, which is like if the Bills don't get out of, don't get way behind, don't get out of their game script and can continue to do what they do best, which in the run game, they should have some advantages against the Chiefs there. And then another thing to add on top of that is the Chiefs have been the worst team in the NFL when it comes to defending the play action pass. So if you hit them with a few of those and then go over the top, there's some holes there against the Chiefs defense that wouldn't be apparent for a team that has only given up 7 points in the last 2 weeks. It's because that game kind of has gotten away from other teams. I don't think that's going to happen with the Bills coming up on Sunday.
You look at this Chiefs defensive front. Obviously, it always starts with Chris Jones. Everybody knows what he brings and the kind of problem he's been for the Bills already. But I want to ask you about George Karlaftis. Obviously 42 pressures on the season, according to Pro Football Focus, the 5 sacks. Josh Allen this season, it has been just a complete departure from what we saw a year ago. He was sacked 14 times total last season, and this season already through 7 games, he's already at that total of 14. So I think, to me, if you're looking at players to watch in this game, Karlaftis is a guy that I almost put him and Greg Rousseau, those bottom of the first round draft picks, guys that both of these teams have built around long-term on the edge, against each other as like who can have the more impactful game. Rousseau's had a couple of those against the Chiefs over the years. Do you feel like where's the level that Karlaftis is playing in your eyes, and how big of a part is he going to be at affecting Josh Allen?
So Karlaftis is a great guy to bring up this week because the Chiefs had this past year the ESPN Kingdom documentary come out, like a 6-part series about the narrative of their season last year. And you go back to that game at Buffalo last year when Josh Allen has the play of the year in the NFL, as Jim Nantz said. I wrote about it today at The Athletic. That 4th and 2 scramble he has where he scores a 26-yard touchdown. And there's a clip in the Kingdom where Karlaftis and Chris Jones are sitting next to each other. They're watching the replay on the video board. And Chris Jones says, "Hey, I went too low. You went too high. We got out of our rush lanes." And Karlaftis goes, "I touched the ball. I touched the ball." And so he was so close right there to getting Josh Allen, and Josh Allen squeezes through that lane, again, makes an amazing individual play, breaks 3 or 4 tackles on his way to the end zone. What's so interesting is you flip back now to the playoff game. I know George Karlaftis didn't get all the way there on Josh Allen. Josh Allen makes a Superman-type play to potentially get the ball to Dalton Kincaid for a chance on that 4th down, but sort of finishing the job in his mind a little bit better than he did in that previous game against Buffalo. But George Karlaftis, I'm going to mispronounce the word, but it's always like the Rorschach test, like, do you see a giraffe or a butterfly? That's really what George Karlaftis is, because I think as analysts, we look at this and we've read these studies about how pressure rate is a lot of times better indicator of a good player than sack rate. Like sometimes sack rate, you get lucky, the other guy rushes well, and the quarterback falls in your lap. If you take those measurements, Karlaftis is really good and trending to be better. He was one of the youngest draft picks when the Chiefs took him 4 years ago. And so they signed him to a 4-year extension this offseason, past these next 2 years because he's on his rookie deal still as a first-round player. But, his pressure numbers are great. And his next-gen stats numbers, I just posted them this past week. It's crazy. I get it. And this is not an accurate comparison, but if you just look at the next-gen stat numbers, him and Aiden Hutchinson, those numbers are almost exactly similar. Now, I know Aiden gets chipped more. I know he gets more attention. I know he's more the Chris Jones type, but I don't think you'd expect those type of numbers from George Karlaftis if you're comparing him to Aiden Hutchinson. So the problem with George has just been finishing these things. And you talked about the 4.5 sacks. I mean, that's good. It's a good number, but it's not a number that makes Chiefs fans' eyes wide open and go, my gosh, this guy is just terrorizing the league. So I think that'll come. If you look over time, sort of the chart that has pressures versus sacks, it usually goes up like this. So, George is one of those that has high pressures and not as many sacks. You would think that's going to even out over the course of the season, but he could have a factor in this game. And like I said, he'll definitely be motivated because he does remember that game last year against Josh Allen and the Bills in Buffalo, and being this close to making a game-changing play. He said, "Hey, I came this close to having a strip sack in that game," and we know that would have potentially changed the outcome, but he'll be motivated against the Bills. And like I said, he's had a good season so far, just waiting on that production to follow when it comes to sacks.
It's been great stuff. I got 1 or 2 more for you, but before we get there, if you're watching the game at home this weekend, make sure you head over to Tops Friendly Markets. Shout is brought to you by Tops. And this Sunday, as always, every Sunday, it's Slider Sunday at Tops. Looking to elevate your food game during football season, Tops is teamed with King's Hawaiian once again to bring you delicious ideas for terrific sliders from around the country. Every Sunday is an opportunity to enjoy tasty sliders made your way. Grab your favorite King's Hawaiian products from Tops and craft the ultimate sliders. Head over to topsmarkets.com/slidersunday to learn more. Okay, so defensively for the Bills, we just talked about potential game wreckers up front for the Chiefs. The Bills' top game wrecker, Ed Oliver, he's going to be out for the majority, if not all, of the season. And so all eyes are on this defensive front. Rookie Deion Walker, who's been a really nice find for them in the middle. Larry Ogunjobi's back. On the outside, though, is where they're really going to rely on things. And then there's a little bit of a unknown at linebacker. Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, your starters early in the season. A lot of people believe that Shaq Thompson and Dorian Williams have played better than them, filling in the last couple of weeks. Looks like Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano could be back this weekend. So a lot of questions about how the Bills will be able to deal with the run game of the Kansas City Chiefs, but Isaiah Pacheco not going to be in the mix. Can you take us into how that changes things for them in the run game? I know Kareem Hunt's still there. They got a really fun, exciting rookie. How does that change the kind of success you think they can have in this game against the Bills?
So the Chiefs are so interesting when it comes to the run game because when they struggle, everybody blames the run offense. And then when they're good, nobody talks about the run offense because that's how Andy Reid rolls. Their run game is the RPO. And a lot of times when Mahomes sees the RPO, he throws the pass because that's open to him. And a lot of things are open to him that might not be open to other average quarterbacks out there. So Pacheco has been their kind of ground back, their first and second down sort of guy. Kareem Hunt has been his superpower is getting third downs and third and shorts. He's been so good at short yardage. I grew up around here. That used to be Marcus Allen in Kansas City. The guy would always get you 3rd and 1. That's really become Kareem Hunt. He has great vision, an ability to move the pile forward. But what's fascinating about him is last year the Chiefs signed him off of, as he liked to call it, the couch. He came from Cleveland where he lived and was not with another team and didn't have training camp and came to the Chiefs. And his second game in, I think he had 24 or 25 carries against the Saints. Talking to him last year at the end of the year, he said, hey, I could barely get out of the bed the next day doing that. So it's interesting with the Chiefs because Kareem's been so good at the short yardage. I don't think you want to overextend him. I don't think you want to have him be your workhorse back. But like I said, the Chiefs don't really have a workhorse back anyway. They love to throw the football. They're number 1 in the NFL when it comes to pass over expectation. And so a lot of this stuff is going to be taken care of with other things, other parts of the game. As I mentioned before, Rashee Rice even got a backfield carry last week, so they can get creative with how they do things. Sometimes Xavier Worthy comes on end arounds and can get you on the outside. So I expect the Chiefs to be creative with this. You talked about Brashard Smith, the rookie. He has come along lately, and he's been more valuable in his role, which is being a pass catcher and them getting him in sort of gadget plays. And once again, for the Chiefs specifically, would you rather have a first and second down back who is maybe a little bit above average? Or would you rather have a guy who you can scheme to, who has great speed, get on the outside and use part of Andy Reid's screen game to his advantage? I think you take the latter because of the pass game being so much more successful than the run game. So I know the Bills have this weakness. I know that people will talk about that. I just don't expect the Chiefs to run it that much. They do what they do. They throw the football. Like I said, the RPO game can be part of this, but I don't anticipate they're going to come in here with the Bills and say, we're going to change exactly what we do and what we've been good at to try to cater to this specific Bills weakness. I think Kareem Hunt will get more carries. The Chiefs have a bye week next week, so we can have another week to heal up. I think that Elijah Mitchell will get called up. He's already been on the active roster, but be a game day active for the first time this year. He'll get some spot carries, but other than that, the Chiefs are going to throw the football. They're going to put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands, and they're going to throw it like they've been throwing the last 3 weeks. So I just don't anticipate to go in this matchup and change what they do just based off this one particular thing. So maybe Bills fans can breathe a sigh of relief with that particular part of it, but the Chiefs' pass game is tough to stop as well.
Indeed, and one of the areas to really watch from a Chiefs perspective is this safety room. And, obviously they're going back to Jordan Poyer in kind of like a tandem role with the rookie Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. I thought he was really good in just 20% of the snaps last week, and they want him out there on third down on obvious passing downs. And honestly, that's probably going to increase his workload this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. So a couple of things. I think you're excited about what you've seen from him. And obviously there's been some good and bad with second round pick Cole Bishop. But against the Chiefs in this passing game, that could be one area that the Chiefs look to really attack at the second and third level. The Bills are going to have to be really good tackling, which has been kind of a part of things early on this season where they've struggled. Last, before I get you out of here, the injury situation at offensive line. Trey Smith didn't play last week. He's on the injury report. I think he has practice limited this week. What is your outlook here in terms of who might not play, who will play, that's been hurt? What do you think?
Yeah, that's bad news for Bills fans. I think that last week was playing the Commanders, 13-point favorites. And let's see if if you're the Chiefs, if you can get Trey Smith back under control and the back spasms. So they did that. He's been back to practice this week. I fully anticipate he'll play against the Bills, which is a big deal because he just got paid highest guard money in the NFL history this past offseason. The Chiefs love him, and he's followed through with a really good year this year. Pacheco should be out, as you mentioned before. And then Josh Simmons, the Chiefs rookie left tackle, will be out as well. He still remains away from the team with a personal issue. Jalen Moore, who they signed in the offseason as a free agent, he's stepped right in, and he's been good. So he's filled in admirably, but we know that the Bills pass rush is something to be feared as well. So he struggled a little bit to the start of the Washington game and got back and kind of recovered from that. But if you're looking for a potential weak link on the outside, that's one to potentially look at. Is Jalen Moore. He's been mostly good for the Chiefs, but he's not Josh Simmons when it comes to ability. So that's potentially something the Bills can look at, try to exploit, try to get after Patrick Mahomes, because he's been so good this year at forgetting, mistakes, and also forgetting, like, if his offensive line lets him down, he has just remained comfortable in the pocket. But we've seen games in the past. If he gets in his own head and starts scrambling and gets out of his own process there, that's really where you can get after him. And it hasn't happened very often this season, but the Bills have the sort of pass rush that potentially can put that down in there.
Great stuff. Jesse, thank you so much for taking some time. Let everybody know, obviously you're over on The Athletic, anything that you want them to go check out this week where they can find you leading up and during the game.
Yeah, I would say the one for Bills fans, again, if you have an Athletic subscription, then it's already there, and you can, go check out the Chiefs stuff as well as the Bills stuff. But wrote today about, hey, the Chiefs keep beating the Bills in the playoffs, which we all know, but they have not solved the Josh Allen conundrum. And so talked with defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, Chris Jones, all these guys about how do you stop this guy? Because if you, as you well know, Matt, this playoff problem for the Bills has not been a Josh Allen problem. It's been, other problems with them. So as much as the Bills have not beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs and those things have played out over time, this has not been a Josh Allen thing, and they've found out very few ways to slow him down. So that's over The Athletic this week. And like I said, looking forward to this matchup this weekend. And it's gone Buffalo's way in the regular season, obviously so often before now. And I just love that atmosphere in Buffalo and seeing those fans. It is unlike any other place that the Chiefs play.
Likewise, I've been to Kansas City a lot. Feel like I've had all the barbecue spots, but I do enjoy going because the atmosphere in these games are so awesome. I'll see you this weekend. I'll look for you in the press box. Thank you so much for taking some time, buddy.